I want to talk to you today about the enduring spirit of Hawaii's divine feminine, Queen Liliʻuokalani. Long after her earthly life ended in 1917, Queen Liliʻuokalani reigns not in palaces or on thrones, but in the hearts of her people, in the land and the waters of Hawaii, and in the realm of spirit, as a guide for justice, sovereignty, and sacred remembrance. The last monarch of the Hawaiian kingdom, she is often remembered for her resistance to the what was seemingly an illegal annexation of Hawaii by the United States. Yet her legacy transcends political leadership. Queen Liliʻukalani was and remains a divine feminine force, an embodiment of aloha, ancestral wisdom, and sacred guardianship. She moves through the spiritual realms not as a fallen queen, but as a living presence, guiding generations through dreams, music, resistance, and the reclamation of true, proud indigenous identity. To understand why Queen Liliʻukalani continues to reign even in the stars, one must see her not just as a historical figure, but as a spiritual being deeply attuned to the sacred energies of her people, her ancestors, and the Aina, the land. Her life was a profound expression of kuleana, sacred responsibility, and her resistance to foreign domination was not merely political, it was spiritual warfare. She stood as a channel of ancestral power, a divine feminine vessel formed by centuries of sacred Hawaiian tradition, of great wisdom, and immense resilience. And so when we go to the sacred roots of it all, we start to look at the early life and the spiritual foundations of a queen in the making. Liliʻuokalani Kamekaha was born into a lineage of ʻAili, royalty raised within the rhythms of sacred protocol and deep reverence for the land, sky, and sea. Her genealogy connected her to a spiritual tapestry that spanned generations, each ancestor a kalo root feeding her into destiny. In the Hawaiian cosmology, genealogy isn't just blood, it is mana, it is spiritual power, and it is Liliʻukalani who was born with a high concentration of it in the likeness of Kamehameha. As a child, she was Hanaid, she was adopted by Abner Paki, who raised her in a home steeped in both Hawaiian tradition and Christian influence. And this duality shaped her ability to bridge two worlds, the ancient and the modern, the spiritual and the political, because she attended royal school where she was educated alongside future monarchs and leaders. But even amid Western instruction, she never lost her connection to who she was, who her ancestors were, her Hawaiian identity, and her spiritual roots. Because you see, music became her sacred language. More than just a hobby or skill, it was a spiritual tool, an extension of power, grief, love, and resistance. Through the compositions she channeled, most notably Aloha Oi, she encoded the sorrow of colonial separation and the eternal bond between her people and their land. You see, the power in her music didn't come solely from melody, it came from the mana infused in every note and every word. She used the power of song in a spiritual way as an invocation, as an incantation, and as resistance, drawing the energy. Even her music today acts as a portal through which her spirit speaks and the energy resonates. Queen Liliʻukalani was not merely just influenced by spirituality, she was the spiritual power in motion. She was sensitive to dreams, omens, ancestral presences, and signs from nature, the birds, the tides, the winds. They spoke to her as she had spoken to her kupuna, her elders. She held the consciousness of an alii wahine, a female chief who understood that leadership wasn't just a sacred kuleana, a divine appointment, but it was more about serving, protecting, and elevating the people. The people come first. Her life was a dance between realms, rooted in the belief that the sacred and political were never ever separate. And this is where we see the emergence of the divine feminine warrior, her reign as spiritual resistance. The divine feminine is not always thought of in a passive way. Quite the opposite. It's nurturing and it's protective, and it is ferociously leveling. In Liliʻukalani, divine feminine expressed itself as a fierce grace because she fought with protocol instead of swords, with prayer instead of rage, and with resilience instead of submission. Her spirit carried the echoes of Pele, the goddess of fire and transformation, and Hiʻiaka, the goddess of healing and courage. So when the United States-backed overthrow of the Hawaiian kingdom took place in 1893, Queen Liliʻukalani did not erupt into a bloodlust for war, even though she certainly had the means. She chose diplomacy, not out of weakness, but out of divine foresight. She knew that bloodshed would only bring suffering to her people, and her surrender was never really defeat. It was a calculated spiritual move, an offering to her ancestors and the gods. You see, she placed her trust in justice, even when the American government had shown that they had a lack of loyalty and trust for them. While imprisoned in Iolani Palace, she turned to prayer and song. She composed over 100 songs and chants, including Ke Aloha a Kahaku, which is a Hawaiian adaptation of the Lord's Prayer. But these were not just simple hymns. They were sacred acts of rebellion. In a place meant to break her, she became more rooted in her spiritual power. She wrote, she reflected, she prayed, not just for herself, but for the healing of her lahui, her nation. Her resistance was spiritual activism at its finest. She refused to abdicate her throne, even when bribed, even when threatened, and even when imprisoned. Her petitions, her writings, her steadfastness, all of it came from the fire of a woman who understood her divine role. She was not just a queen of a nation, she was a priestess of her people's soul. And this is where the fusion of faiths begun, because she came with her indigenous spirituality, even though she mixed it with some Christian devotion, and this made her into a spiritual giant. You see, Queen Liliʻuokalani stood at a unique crossroads of belief. She was born into a people whose cosmology honored the living spirit in every mountain, stone, ocean, wave, river, stream, tree, ancestral bone. She was devout in her faith, but she was also a Christian. And so she didn't view Christianity as the erosion of the old ways. She used it as a sacred meeting point of Hawaiian animism and Christian mysticism for the ancestral prayers and the biblical psalms. As the voices of the kapuna harmonized with the voice of the gospel, she turned to God, and this fusion did not dilute her strength. It strengthened it, layering her mana with a multifaceted wisdom. To the Hawaiians, spirituality was never a compartmentalized concept, and it was not one that would be abandoned. It was integrated into every action, from planting kalo to composing mele, from governance to childbirth. The ali'i were considered sacred intermediaries between the people and the divine. Liliʻukalani, as a woman of noble birth and spiritual acumen, carried this ancestral knowing deeply within her bones. She was trained in the chants, trained in the legends and the spiritual protocols of her land. She knew the power of the kahuna, the sacred keepers of the knowledge. She honored the gods, Kane, Lono, Ku, and Kanaloa, and the Amuka, the family guardian spirits that watched over each bloodline like living stars in the sky. But rather than cast aside her indigenous heritage, she did what all spiritual warriors do. She wove the truths together. Her understanding of God was not limited to Western interpretation. She saw the divine as both the creator of the heavens and the pulse in the waters of Waikiki, the whisper in the winds of Nuuanu, and the sacred fire within the volcanoes. Her prayers did not erase her roots. She stood proudly on them. And when she prayed to Keʻakua, she did so with the mana of a woman whose ancestors walked among gods. When she sang hymns, they were laced with the cadence of the ancient ʻōlelo, the chants. She saw no contradiction in honoring both the Lord Christ as well as the sacred feminine energies of the land, including Pele, the goddess of the volcanoes and change, and Haumea, the goddess of fertility and birth. Her ability to hold these truths simultaneously made her a spiritual fortress which became unassailable. This synthesis of traditions made Liliʻuokalani a towering spiritual force, not just for Hawaiians, but for oppressed peoples everywhere, because she embodied a fiery spirituality that could never be quenched and could not truly be colonized. While her nation was forcibly taken from her, her soul remained sovereign. She became a walking temple where ancestral wisdom and knowledge and divine revelation still coexisted, where the sacred feminine and the masculine danced in balance. She was still unstoppable, not because of physical might, but because her power came from hidden realms that no empire could ever conquer. Her resistance was cosmic. And she is the queen who still reigns. Liliʻukalani, in the Hawaiian Renaissance and beyond, helped Hawaii come into a new age, because her earthly reign may have very well ended in the early 20th century, but her spirit never left the land. She is more than a memory. She is an abiding presence. As the Hawaiian Renaissance unfolded in the 1970s and 80s, it was fueled by a collective yearning for cultural, linguistic, and spiritual reclamation. And Liliʻukalani's name and mana surged once more throughout the land. Her music was resurrected not merely as art, but as scripture. Her words were studied not only as historical record, but as prophecy. Her image appeared on murals, her legacy spoken at protests, and her story passed down like a sacred ʻōlelo. This is storytelling. This is whispered on the wind. The queen had become an akua wahine, a deified woman, an ancestral guardian whose spirit will always live on in the waves and the uplifts in the lahui. In these ceremonies honoring the land's sovereignty and native rights, her name is invoked with a deep and reverence and respect among the peoples. Spiritual practitioners chant her mele as a way of opening portals to the past and anchoring prayers in the presence. Her palace is no longer just a building. It is a sanctuary, a place where her mana lingers in every floorboard, every hallway. Even her imprisonment chamber, where she once was held, is considered hallowed ground, transferred from a space of colonial punishment into a shrine of quiet strength. Among cultural practitioners, Liliʻuokalani is seen as a source of divine feminine insight. She is called upon as a guardian spirit when navigating difficult political issues, cultural healing, and personal transformation. Her resilience in the face of betrayal is seen as a spiritual template for others who face displacement, loss, and struggle. Through chants, dreams, and ancestral communion, many feel her presence guiding them through grief, leading them back to Pono, the way of righteousness, and urging them to never forget who they are as they pursue the way. Therefore, in the current generation where indigenous communities worldwide fight for land, language, and cultural preservation, Queen Liliʻuokalani stands as a beacon. Her sovereignty not being political, it was spiritual. She reminds us that leadership is sacred and that womanhood is power, and that love for one's people and land is a divine right and a divine calling. The way she fought with grace, with fire, and unwavering prayer is now a sacred script that many have chosen to follow, and while the United States may have overthrown her monarchy, it could never overthrow her spirit. Queen Liliʻukalani is the eternal feminine rising. The story of Queen Liliʻukalani is not about colonization or even the feeble resistance that was able to be put up because of the fact that they faced overwhelming odds. It is about the spiritual endurance of a divine feminine force who chose love over war, song over silence, and spirit over surrender. She reminds us that power need not roar in to shake the heavens, that it need not stain the land with the blood of those who fight in battle, but it is one that is resolute and stands strong among nations. We find an archetype of the sacred queen, the mother, the warrior, the priestess, the protector, the composer of music and destiny. She is Pele's fire, she is Hiʻiaka's healing, and she is Haumea's birth energy all in one. She has the Christ consciousness with compassion as a Hawaiian sovereign braided together with a lei of truth, and in her the ocean and the altar kiss. Now, more than a century after her passing, she walks among us, a spiritual giant in the rising of the ʻōlelo Hawaiian language as the land struggles of Mauna Kea, in the hula dancers honoring her legacy, in the keiki learning to chant her name. She still reigns in the spiritual realms, watching with regal eyes, reminding us that the spirit of a people cannot be broken, it cannot be colonized, her crown can never be taken, her kingdom lives on in the hearts of her people and the unseen realms where spirit is law. Aloha oe e Liliʻukalani. But never goodbye. It is only until we meet again. And Liliʻukalani, she thrives in all of us, and she thrives in you. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.